Hello and welcome to this August edition of Property News. Today I'm looking forward to giving you an update on the UK economy, talking about what's happening right now in the property market and giving you some real investor insights for the next couple of months. So my name's Tony Law from yourfirst4houses.com, and my channel's all about helping you replace a job-based income with just a few properties so that you can give up the day job if you wish and go and do something more interesting with your life, like learning to cook. If this is your first time here, be sure to subscribe to the channel and click that bell notification icon so that you don't miss out on any of the free content that I give you each and every week. So let's start things off with the economy first of all. So on the 19th of July, aka Freedom Day, lockdown was finally lifted, and every day since then we've seen the number of daily infections drop, which is obviously fantastic. Like everyone, I'm hoping this downward trend will continue, although I suspect infections will rise again a bit as we get into the autumn. The BBC has actually put together a really interesting report on the 4 numbers that matter when it comes to COVID, and so can I suggest that you check that out? I'll put a link in the description box below. On the 25th of July, 2 reports by the Public Accounts Committee stated, "The government's response to the pandemic has exposed UK taxpayers to significant financial risk. The UK government's debt now stands at 2.2 trillion, which is approximately 99.7% of GDP, a rate not seen since the early 1960s. Believe it or not, in June alone, the amount of interest paid on this debt was 8.7 billion. That's just in June. And there I was worrying about my mortgages. UK inflation jumped to 2.4% in July, up from 2.1% last month. This is now well above the Bank of England's 2% target, which will again put pressure on the idea of raising interest rates, although I personally don't think this will be happening anytime soon. Again, just my best guess on that. The unemployment rate lifted slightly to 4.8% in the 3 months to May, although there is still a huge demand by employers in some areas, in particular hospitality. Similarly, the head of Checkatrade reported a real shortage of skilled trade workers now that so many skilled EU migrants have left the UK. This, combined with a big increase in demand for home improvements, of course. I've actually seen this shortage firsthand over the past month on a refurb that I'm doing in Poole. All the subcontractors that I usually use, they're just swamped with work. By the way, keep an eye out for a video that I've got coming out where I share exactly how I got over this problem and managed to find some really amazing tradespeople who could do the work quickly. As I say, keep an eye out for that video. In July, there was a huge surge in the number of people pinged by the NHS app. But these people are obviously being told to self-isolate, which in turn has led to shortages of staff in key roles. However, on the 26th of July, a new scheme was rolled out to allow certain key workers to join daily workplace test schemes instead of having to self-isolate. Now this sounds great, but unfortunately it can't be used by supermarket workers, which is kind of where a lot of the staff shortages are located, unfortunately. Lastly for this section, at the end of June I reported that Bitcoin had fallen below $30,000 for the first time in 6 months. But at the end of July, Elon Musk stated that Tesla is most likely to start accepting it again as a payment, after having said this in May that the Tesla would no longer accept cryptocurrencies for vehicle purchases. As a result, the currency jumped, and at the time of filming, the price currently sits just below $40,000. By the way, if you're finding this video in any way helpful, I would really appreciate it if you could click on that like button. It really helps me if that's okay. So moving on to property. Well, this month, Rightmove reported the busiest ever first half of a year, with average asking prices pushed to a new record high for the 4th consecutive month. The average asking price for a UK property now stands at £338,447, which is 0.7% higher than last month. This equates to an annual price change of 5.7%. In the first 6 months of 2021, Rightmove logged 140,000 sales agreed, which is an incredible number. Whereas there were 85,000 fewer new listings coming onto the market than the long-term average. This surge in activity has led to a shortfall of 225,000 homes for sale, and is actually a big reason as to why house prices have continued to climb, when so many have predicted a property crash. Family homes with 4 or more bedrooms are facing the biggest imbalance, with a 39% surge in sales but a 15% fall in the number of these properties coming onto the market compared to 2019. Similarly, the mass market 3-bedroom sector has seen a 28% jump in sales while suffering a 10% drop in new supply. Largely as a result, prices for this type of property have jumped 6.9% this year alone. I was fascinated to read that John Lewis have announced plans to move into the residential property market by building 10,000 homes to rent over the next few years. They will be offering their tenants the choice of renting fully furnished with John Lewis products or obviously using their own products. Very clever. In July, Property Tribes shared data from Paragon Bank that showed 39% of landlords have seen increased tenant demand over the past 3 months, with 18% of landlords saying this increase in demand has been really significant. And lastly, on the property front, the government has released a new easy-to-read how to rent guide. Now, whilst this guide does not replace the current December 2020 How to Rent booklet, which landlords must legally continue to serve, this new easy-to-read version can be offered as a supplement to it if needed. Okay, so let me share this month's investor insights with you. But before I dive in, can I just say, as I always do, these are just my personal opinions and I may well be wrong. You've always got to do your own full and complete due diligence, especially when it comes to any deals that you may be looking at. So the first one is the imbalance between supply and demand will obviously continue to sustain house prices for the rest of the year, in my opinion. There are obviously a number of other influences that are obviously going to be having an impact on house prices, but it's simply that supply and demand situation that I feel very confidently will sustain those house prices all the way through to the first quarter of January. Or can I at least say to the end of this year? We'll see what happens when we get to the back end of this year. The next thing that I wanted to share with you is buyers are absolutely continuing to rethink what they want from a property. They're obviously looking for some space, and in particular some garden space, if at all possible. And many people are still continuing to lean in this working from home type scenario. And obviously some of the bigger companies are actually actively encouraging this, or this kind of hybrid working. Why am I sharing that here? What's the relevance to you? Well, I just think that you guys need to keep that in mind when you're doing any work, any development work of any kind, even if it's just modifying existing properties. What outside space can you kind of incorporate in? Even if it's a flat, you can still incorporate in many cases some outside space. You may have to be a little bit creative as to how you get down to those garden spaces, but keep that in mind. It's going to make a big difference moving forwards. Speaking about flats, well, they continue to show the least growth over the past 12 months. Because obviously, as I say, everybody's looking for those outside spaces. They're shifting into more houses and as a result, obviously leaning away from some of the bigger urban centres. Now, you already know this. There's no new information there. But the reason I'm mentioning it now is because I honestly think option agreements, working in association with flats, may be really powerful tools from this point onwards. So if that's your strategy, if you're looking at flats, I think you should be leaning more in terms of using options to control those properties. And if you're not familiar with what they are, book a coaching call and I'll be happy to talk you through all of those. The next thing I wanted to talk about actually leaned on from a really interesting conversation. I do lots of coaching. And I love doing the coaching calls, although I find them quite exhausting sometimes, so I always minimize how many I do a week. Try to keep out of the office a bit more these days. But I had a really interesting coaching call with somebody who wants to invest in the UK, but they're not based in the UK. And I kind of left the call having given them some guidance, some advice on how they could do it, because they're not geographically challenged. What I mean by that is, if you live in Bristol, like I do, well, you're obviously focusing, aren't you, around the Bristol area. Well, those people that are living abroad, they don't have that. They could actually invest anywhere. So I actually phoned the chap back. And I said, listen, this one's on me. I've had a bit more of a think about this. Can we continue on where we were? And we had another kind of 45 minutes on the phone because I had a bit of an epiphany. They're not geographically challenged, they don't have to focus on any one given area, so I suggested very strongly that they should focus on Freeport regions. Now the Freeport regions, as you're probably aware, are East Midlands Airport, Felixstowe, Harwich, the Humber region, Liverpool City Centre, Plymouth, Solent, Thames and Teesside. These are all areas where over the next sort of year or two or three you're going to see some real demand for properties that are going to be coming into that area. So if you can get in now, if you can buy in those areas, and I'm really thinking more in terms of everything from your HMOs through to very much serviced accommodation, through to smaller houses, you know, 2-bedroom houses or flats or 3-bedroom, these kind of things. I honestly think you're going to have a great potential for long-term capital growth in those areas. So if you're one of these people who are not geographically challenged, you don't really mind where you invest, look firstly at those Freeport regions. The next thing that I wanted to share with you, I'm nearly there by the way, the next thing is I want to share with you, look after your trades. Now I've had a real challenge over this past month getting people to work on this project that I'm doing down in Poole because everyone is so busy. So if you're one of these people that are doing a job and you've got trades coming and you've got them working in your property and they may be doing, for example, hanging the doors or doing the plumbing or whatever, when that job is finished, pick up the phone, give them a call, get them over to the house to see the finished job, walk them round, kind of show them a bit of love really, and in particular give them some beers, give them something that shows that you really appreciated them working on that job for you. It's so important. This is coming from an ex-kitchen fitter. It's so important that you do this. If you look after your trades, the next time you need a job doing, you know, you're going to pick up the phone, give them a call. They're going to see your face on their phone. They're going to have a bit of a smile and they're going to say, yeah, I'm going to take that call, whereas I ignored the last 2 times the phone rang. So look after your trades. The last thing I want to say to you before I call it a day here, the BBC have done a really interesting little sort of kind of video series on what they're referring to as CEO secrets. I'll put a link in the description box below. It's not relevant to property, but it is really relevant to kind of entrepreneurial mindset. That may not be your cup of tea, but do you know what? Grab a cup of tea, sit down and watch some of these. Honestly, some of these really successful people are putting out golden nuggets of information for when it comes to running your business.